This is the hose that blew out on our trip, and the reason why I decided I need to figure out a way to more or less bulletproof my 5.4 liter engine. Two valve. This is my new Melling 176 high volume oil pump with the lower pressure spring installed. I didn't want high pressure, I just wanted more pressure. This is the new Melling timing chain, tensioners, and chain guides installed. You can see on the right side here there are the two shiny links up there, and there is a slot in the wheel. The chains go on either side of that to time it. Same on the passenger side. You see the two shinier links on either side of the timing notch. And with the top dead center tool, and making sure that those chains are between on either side of the timing mark, you know you have a good timing on it. So there's the right side, see the R. Here is the bottom. This is the timing gear. On my engine, it's a single gear that is reversible, and you put the shiny link right on the timing mark. So here is the intake manifold, and you see the discoloration of the plastic in there, and that is from the antifreeze and time and hot and cold and years of use. And so anyway, you can see that there was a piece of the this right side that I'm chiseling away broken away, and that's what I believe caused the boil over. It got sucked up into the heater line, plugged the line, and then starved the water pump for coolant. So I did fix it on the road, but so that there you saw the aluminum piece that I made. It's slightly thicker than the plastic of the manifold, so when the two halves go together, it will make a positive seal. The two halves will clamp together on that. So I've embedded it in right stuff, and now I'm putting right stuff around all the bolt holes, and I'm just going to make sure that this thing is not going to leak again. I've got right stuff all around the left side here, and now this side's okay. It'll still use the manifold or the O-ring, and I might have been able to set up the O-ring on the right side if I had taken more time bending that aluminum piece. So I'm putting the two halves together here, sandwiching them into the right stuff. And the right stuff, you let it dry for about 90 minutes, and then you put it together, and it's supposed to make a good gasket. You can see that I ground out the manifold crossover tube to match the gasket size, and you see the shadow of my fingertip. That is the aluminum piece I fitted inside of there. So I ground out the manifold, and that's going to open up the port size, and that port being larger will allow the pressure to drop down inside of the manifold because it's not going to be so restricted. This is the other side here. The O-ring retaining is okay. You can see that I have cleaned out the excess right stuff inside of the manifold, and that round hole, that is the hole that comes directly up from the water pump. This is where I am porting out the heads and port matching them to the headers, and you can see the headers here where I'm working on the port match right now. And the head opening, you want a little smaller than the header size. You want to blow in and outward, not onto the manifold. And there you saw the 4 tubes inside the exhaust manifold header collector. So there is a aluminum slug that I fitted to the coolant port. This is the rear left head, and I'm going to file that weld down to a smooth finish, and it's all closed off. There will never be a leak from this area again, and it's not used. It doesn't need anything. So this is the right rear. The right rear, I am making another slug to patch weld that. And that's what it looks like after you weld it and file it flat smooth again. And this is the welder. There is my handheld MIG reel, and so I'm gonna weld the aluminum there. And I got this from Harbor Freight. It did a really good job, I gotta say. Of course, it cost me about $1,700 for all the equipment. And there it is, a Titanium Unlimited 200 multi-processor. And it did a really good job on everything. The MIG gun is a little bit finicky, though. I need to work with that. That is a Y pipe that I'm going to install, and that is said to be an instant 30 horsepower. These are the Gibson Shorty stainless headers, and those again are supposed to add torque and horsepower. These are the rear of the head coolant adapters. You see how those go on. Notice I made some aluminum adapters to fasten them to the heads. This is inside the head with my probe scope, and I was just making sure that the O-rings were set in the aluminum and not past it. These are the Cometic head gaskets. These are half as thick as the Felpros. And now I'm showing you the studs, ARP studs, that I'm using instead of the twist to yield bolts. I am just not a fan of twist to yield. Whenever I've done an engine, I've always put studs on them, and I didn't put studs on the last couple of head changes on previous engines because I just didn't. This one, I'm putting them on. So here you see the Cometic head gasket, $163 each. And what's different about these between the Felpro is that each cylinder has a full O-ring around it, including between the bores. And the Felpro only has one ring going down between the bores, and so that greatly reduces your sealing ability. So here is your those 3 bolts, and you put those 3 bolts in like that so that you can get the head on and off. You need them in the head like that to get clearance from the air box on the AC heating system. These are the torque wrenches I got from Harbor Freight. No sponsor, I paid for everything here. Inch pounds, foot pounds, and this here's the big split beam torque wrench. I really like that torque wrench. And so this here's the left head, and you can just see those O-rings between the cylinders, and these are supposed to be really good head gaskets. They work great so far. On the right is the short Gibson bolt that came with the headers. Too short. It pulled out threads. You can see a couple of threads are still in it, and so I quickly grabbed my old studs and used those stainless studs. They were still in fine shape, and you can see all the studs are in place and holding the manifold header on just fine. And we are dropping the left head down onto the engine right now, and gonna stick all the studs in there. And you turn your studs down all the way, bottom them out, and then turn them back 1/4 of an inch, and that is direct from ARP on the phone. I talked to them, and then go through the torquing sequence. I torqued mine to 90 pounds. They say 85. I wanted 90, and the bolts will take it. So those are the MMR Racing head coolant adapters on the backs of the heads. And you see that aluminum piece there is my adapter. This is the coolant return tube going to the back of the water pump in the valley of the engine, up towards the front of the engine. This is in the back there. That's where the hoses, 1/2-inch hoses from each of the coolant adapters come together, and then they go forward to this adapter T, and those are 5/8 hoses, and they go from The one we're looking at right now, the side that's from the heater core, that's the one from the back there. You can see a oxygen sensor and the new bolts for the headers below. And that is the aluminum piece I made to bolt the coolant adapter to the head, because the bolt holes on that didn't line up. I had to make my own adapter to screw them onto the head. This is a red heavy-duty industrial heater hose, much stronger, tougher than the factory rated heater hose. Now the way this works is coolant goes from the crossover tube to the heater core, back from the heater core to this T, and that T there are half-inch hoses coming up from the coolant adapter on each head, left and right, and then 5/8 hose comes up to this T, and then this hose goes around, connects up to the coolant return tube that goes through the valley and up to the water pump. And so what that's going to do is make sure that I never ever again have a water blockage going to the heater water pump, because there's two ways to go back to the water pump. So there you see Right Stuff gasket sealant on the gaskets. And if you look at the gasket in the back there, you'll see it in a minute. I made a aluminum slug that fits the opening of the water passage in the gasket in the back here, and then I put Right Stuff against the head, laid the metal slug into it, and then put Right Stuff over it so it's encased. And same on the left side here, because these two will never ever serve any purpose for coolant. They are just sealed off. The intake manifold is sealed back there. It's only got one bolt holding it there, you see, and it will leak on you. They just always leak. It may not be today or tomorrow, but it will leak. It's just a plastic junk intake manifold. So we're gonna come up and look at the front of the engine here in a second. But I've got a couple thousand miles on the engine now. No leaks, no compression leaks, no oil leaks. Everything is tight. So there's the front one there. And I'm going to drop the intake manifold down on it. Everything so far has worked out fine. And if you see the distance between the two bolt holes there, the front and the second intake port, that is why it leaks in this front crossover tube. It's just got that one bolt down below. You see the all thread, and that stainless steel bar there I fitted to press down on the crossover tube, and that keeps the coolant, the gasket, from failing because it's pushing down evenly. When you have that wide 5-inch gap between the two bolts, they tend to lift up. So I have a whole video on that. It's a very popular video. Take a look for it. There is the title of the video there. All right, so now we are looking at the engine is together, finished up now. You see, I had to get a new alternator here. This is a 250 amp alternator out of Tucson, and I had to grind out the back of the intake manifold to make it fit. Now we're looking at the pressure gauge of on the coolant system, and you see when you go to 3,000 RPM, water pressure goes up to about 18 or 20 pounds, and at idle it's generally at about 4 pounds. So there is pressure in the water, and with the work that I've done opening up the gasket size and the rear coolant adapters, it has helped lower the pressure. So this here is my new aluminum radiator. It has an 1.5-inch core. The old one had an 1-inch core. So this is a big help in keeping the engine cool. Now we're looking at the left header, stainless steel. And now we're looking at the right header. And I was able to install those on the heads. So that was a lot easier to install them off engine than on engine. Now this is the old exhaust here. You see that right side out comes down to the back, then comes forward, then 180. And this is the new exhaust system, and this is the left side comes down, the right side comes straight into a Y, and that's it. 2.25-inch pipes coming into a 3-inch Y, and forms the flange. The flange bolts up to the catalytic converter with stainless steel bolts. But look how much better that is. The old system, you can see how the right and the left were exhausting straight into each other. How stupid is that? Now this here is my air intake. That's the stock intake, and it only had a 2.5-inch opening on it. So what I did is I made a 3.5-inch opening, and I made that with 3-inch ABS parts. This is the throttle body, and you can see the throttle body is larger diameter than the original air inlet. So these are my new springs, 2,950 pound rated 3-leaf front springs, and they raised the front of the truck 4 inches on the right and left. The old springs were sagging, and the left side especially, so the left was about 1 inch lower than everywhere else. The 3.5-inch cold air inlet. Adapted to the factory stock manifold. And what else we got? I think that's probably pretty much it. Let's walk on back here. You can take a listen to what the exhaust sounds like. It's nice there are no leaks coming out of the pipe I welded. Always a nice thing. You can see nothing but water, steam. Very, very clean running truck now. It sounds good. And of course, here are the rear 6+1 leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus the one on the bottom. Then I have the Firestone airbags. That is a Napa. It's supposed to be a stainless steel muffler, but it sure isn't looking like it's stainless. Ranch 9000 shock absorbers. These are the front springs. See, they're 3-leaf, 2,950 pound rated. The rear ones are 4,400 pound rated. And then again, Rancher 9000 up front. I've got the big sway bar. They got a big rear sway bar too. Sway bars make this thing handle really well for a truck. Still have to install my ditch lights. Those are really good for when you're going down forest roads and you want to see what's to the right of you or to the left of you that is in the dark, because your headlights don't shine over that way. There's those headers. So I am really looking forward to getting the camper loaded on and taking a trip and seeing how this thing runs with the camper and what kind of mileage you get. Here's the left one. Ranchos. That. And the header. So yeah, listen to that engine. Sounds just great. Look how smooth that thing is. No vibration, nothing. Just a smooth purr.